Ethan Davis had worked his entire life to build his empire. From humble beginnings in a small town, he climbed the ranks in the hotel industry, eventually purchasing a rundown property in the heart of the city. Through sheer will and determination, he transformed that property into a premier luxury hotel, the Sterling Oaks. Despite his success, Ethan never lost sight of where he came from. He understood the challenges people like him faced, particularly as a black man in an industry often dominated by those who didn't look like him. He'd experienced discrimination firsthand and was determined not to let others face the same treatment. But Ethan had always been curious. Would his own employees treat him differently if they didn't know who he was? So he decided to test them. One morning he showed up at his hotel unannounced, dressed simply in a gray hoodie and jeans, carrying nothing more than a plain backpack. He succeeded in his mission, to say the least. But still, he looked like any other tourist who wasn't dressed to impress. The Sterling Oaks had become a staple for business people and tourists alike. The lobby was large and grand, with polished stone floors and intricate chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. The staff was always busy but welcoming, creating an air of professionalism that Ethan took great pride in. Ethan made his way inside, keeping his head down and pretending to be just another guest. He watched as staff members greeted customers, checked in new arrivals, and carried out their duties. He could tell that, for the most part, things were running smoothly. However, Ethan wasn't interested in the usual operations. He had come to see something else, the way his employees would treat him if they thought he was just another stranger. He made his way to the front desk, where two employees were assisting a family. As he lingered near the counter, scanning through the hotel brochure, a man's voice caught his attention. "Can I help you with something, sir?" The voice was sharp, almost impatient. Ethan turned to find a tall, middle-aged man standing in front of him. The man's name tag read, Jordan Manager. "Just looking around," Ethan said calmly, with a friendly smile on his face. Jordan's eyes narrowed as he looked Ethan up and down. His polite demeanor quickly turned dismissive. "Are you staying here?" he asked, with a tone less friendly than before. "No," Ethan replied. "Just taking in the place. I hope that's okay?" Jordan crossed his arms. "This is a private establishment. If you're not a guest or conducting business, I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave." Ethan stayed calm, but the situation was beginning to make him uneasy. "I'm not bothering anyone. Why should I leave?" he asked, trying to keep the conversation civil. Jordan's posture stiffened, and his tone became more forceful. "I'm sorry, but we can't have people just walking around without a purpose. If you're not a guest, I'll have to call security." Ethan could feel the weight of the words. There was something about Jordan's attitude that felt off, too eager to kick someone out without asking the right questions. He wondered just how far the manager would push this. Before the situation escalated further, another voice interrupted them. "Everything all right here?" A woman stepped up to the desk, her confident stride giving off an air of authority. Ethan turned to see Sarah, the hotel's general manager, walking towards them. She had been with the hotel since Ethan took over and had earned his trust over the years. "I'm good. Just looking around," Ethan said, still remaining calm. Sarah glanced between the two men and could immediately sense the tension. "Jordan, what's going on?" Jordan hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "This man was wandering the lobby, and I asked him to leave. He's not a guest, and I'm following protocol." Sarah raised an eyebrow, but her expression remained neutral. "You asked him to leave?" Jordan nodded, looking proud of himself. "Yes, he was just loitering. We can't have people hanging around the lobby," he said while thinking that people like Ethan would scare away potential guests. Sarah's gaze shifted to Ethan, who was still standing there with his backpack. Her eyes softened when she recognized him. "Wait a minute," she said, looking back at Jordan. "You don't know who this is, do you?" Jordan's confusion was evident. "Who is he? Someone I am supposed to know about?" "This is Ethan Davis," Sarah said, her tone now sharp and irritated. "The owner of the hotel, the reason this place is running as well as it is. He's the one who turned the Sterling Oaks into what it is today." Jordan's face turned pale. "The owner?" he stammered in disbelief while trying to stay composed. "Yes, Jordan," Sarah said with a slight edge to her voice. "The owner." Jordan's face flushed with embarrassment. and he seemed to struggle to find words. "I didn't realize. I didn't mean to." "Of course you didn't," Ethan interrupted, his voice calm but firm. "You didn't see a suit or an expensive watch, so you assumed I didn't belong here. That's the truth, isn't it?" Jordan opened his mouth but couldn't form a response. The silence was deafening, and the awkwardness of the moment hung in the air. But so did Jordan's job at that moment. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to remain composed. "This is exactly why I visit unannounced. I need to see how my staff behaves when they think no one important is watching. And today, Jordan, you failed that test." Jordan's shoulders slumped. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Davis. I never meant—" "I know you didn't," Ethan cut him off. "But you did it anyway. You judged me based on nothing but my appearance. And that's why you're being suspended, effective immediately." Ethan said while thinking that he couldn't believe someone who was acting so racist went under his radar all this time. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise, but she didn't say anything. Ethan was already making his decision, and it was clear he wouldn't back down. Jordan's face was a mixture of shock and shame. "I understand," he said quietly. Without another word, he turned and walked away, his head hanging low. Sarah looked at Ethan, her expression apologetic. "I'm so sorry about that. I'll handle it." Ethan nodded, watching Jordan leave. "It's not your fault, Sarah, but it's my responsibility to make sure something like this doesn't happen again." For the rest of the day, Ethan observed his employees. He spoke to the bellhops, the front desk staff, and the housekeepers. He saw mostly professionalism, but the incident with Jordan stuck in his mind. Everything was great, but as most of us do, he was thinking about the parts that weren't so great. Especially since that encounter reminded him of the many moments like that he found himself during his journey. Later that evening, Ethan sat in his office reflecting on what had happened. He had faced prejudice throughout his life, but to have it happen in his own hotel was particularly painful. His success and hard work should have been enough for his employees to treat him with respect. But once again, it had been his appearance that had determined how he was treated. Still, Ethan wasn't one to hold grudges. He believed in second chances. That night, he sent Jordan an email, acknowledging his apology, but also informing him of the mandatory training on diversity and inclusion he would need to complete before being considered for reemployment. The next morning, Jordan responded with another apology. This one seemed genuine. It wasn't based on fear and shock like the first one. He admitted his mistake, expressed his willingness to learn, and asked for another chance. Ethan leaned back in his chair, considering the situation. He knew people could change, but actions spoke louder than words. He decided to give Jordan the opportunity to prove himself. If he truly wanted to change, Ethan would help him get there. Since for him, racism was something that he wanted to completely eradicate from his establishment. In the end, Ethan made sure the hotel remained a place where everyone, regardless of their background, was treated with respect. He had built his success on that principle, and he wasn't about to let anyone forget it. As long as Ethan Davis was in charge of the Sterling Oaks, racism and prejudice had no place in his world. Did you ever find yourself in a situation like this? How did you react? Let us know in the comments down below.